that's an odd feature of modernity, isn't it? That a lot of the a lot of us on the left, as I always, we're kind of cautious about loving money, aren't we? We kind of, and I think that comes to one of the other things that you've got as your hidden injury, which is the myth of equality, the hidden injuries of class, where we see rich people as being pretty nasty, and therefore, and we associate them with capitalism and so on and so forth as well. So what? And it seems as though actually, when I look at the list of the hidden injuries, we've got at the one hand we're saying use the bribery fund, corrupt them. On the other hand, we're very critical of our own leaders being corrupted and being corrupt. So there are these tensions, aren't there, within modernity, which actually can't be resolved, really. They've just got to be played down. We've got to be a bit Anglican about it and just look the other way a little bit, or not be too earnest about corruption, or else it'll get in the way of solutions.
Well, those are two very important questions, and are two headings here. And I think I'll do the corruption one first before equality. Now, when you use the word corruption, most people just throw it around, and I've just thrown it around. What do you mean? And basically means something I disapprove of. It's what I wouldn't do. And then when you say, well, how did you get your job? Well, someone put in a word for me. I mean, for example, when I went to my university, I later discovered a letter from my uncle, who had been at that same college and that same university, to the head of that college saying, you know, my nephew is a good chap. And then he said, you know, of course, you must disregard this nonsense. But, you know, is that corruption, nepotism? Well, you know, it's on the edge of it. So basically, corruptio, I imagine, I've forgotten my Latin, but it basically means something which eats away. My images of a metal, which is, I mean, it's in the Bible, let not moth and rust corrupt. And rust, moths eat away at cloth. Rust eats away at metals. And that's what corruption means. It means something which is strong is being insidiously eaten away. Now, in relation to modernity and the four spheres, what we now mainly mean by corruption is when what we consider to be a boundary between one sphere and another has been infiltrated. So we say, for example, that you should get your jobs by merit. But if you get in through some other way, i.e. personal influence, that is corruption. And it's constantly being tightened and changed. Just a trivial example, when I came to Cambridge and I did the entrance examinations for my college, we would get all the stuff about a student coming to Cambridge. And it would say, you know, they got 3 stars at A-level and they're head of the school and they play in the orchestra and they've been all around the world. And then there would be a letter from the housemaster saying, dear Frank, you know, you'll remember I was at your college 5 years ago. No, 25 years ago, 30 years ago. And you will remember that I sent you X and Y from my school and they did very well and so on. And I look forward to seeing you at the annual reunion of our club or whatever. Yours, Bill. Now, we were told when I was introduced to the system that you're picking people blind. You don't know when, just because they've happened to speak 6 languages and they've read Dostoevsky 6 times, doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be much good at Cambridge. Because a lot more is required of them, their character, their personality, their family, even, you know, what kind of tradition they come from. So don't disregard Bill's letter. He is like a horse trainer. He's trained a number of horses. The horses he's sent us before have turned out to be really good. The chances, therefore, are with this one, it adds to the credibility of the case quite strongly. And indeed, you know, the system was carried to the extent where I didn't do it, but I imagine sometimes, you know, you had two people, one, this is from a school who sent us some good people. This is from an unknown grammar school somewhere. Which are we going to choose? And you would ring up, you know, they'd written this, you'd ring up Bill and say, you know, did you mean that? And what other evidence have you got that they're really good? And they'd say, well, actually, I went on a holiday with the family once, and he seemed pretty bright and interesting, and so on. So basically, the more information, some of it off the record, some of it personalized. Now that now is totally taboo, corrupt. No Cambridge College would ever be seen dead taking a recommendation. And if we're seen to be taking too many people from Eton or any other public school, we're in deep trouble because it's corruption. So basically, it means if you're in the church and you become too wealthy, that's corruption. If you're in politics in this country and you become too wealthy, that's corruption, because where's it all, the money all coming from? So each different sphere should be autonomous and kept apart. Yeah. Now, that is our model of corruption in the third world. Now, again, you come to systems where that has never been, there's never been those separations. And therefore, the system doesn't work. For example, traditionally, in the political system, none of your salary as a policeman or whatever it is, or very little of it in India until recently, came from your salary. I noticed this in China, and it puzzled me for a time, and I talked about it, and I finally worked out. In China, the government was very poor, didn't have much money to pay to its servants. So if you looked at the salary of a government employee, anything from a university teacher down to a policeman or a safety officer or a porter or anything employed by the government when we first went to China, it was ridiculous. The average salary was 6,000 RMB, which was enough to pay a rent on a flat in Beijing for about 2 weeks or a month. And you had children to educate, and you had a car to run, and you know, so we said it was clear that your expenditure was 6 to 10 times your salary. So, and I noticed this in Portugal also with university employees in Portugal, my Portuguese friends, and in Italy and, you know, in European countries. So you said to your university friend, you know, you get paid a quarter of what you need. What do you do? They say, well, we have 4 other jobs. We teach in other universities. We have a private business. If you're a scientist in a Chinese university, you set up private companies. You get big research grants coming in. So you don't live off your salary. Now, I saw this, it was explained to me in India, and I talked to Indian anthropologists, and they said, they pointed to, you know, someone, a street vendor in an Indian street. They said, Alan, do you know how the system of corruption works from the street level upwards? And I said, no. And they said, well, this street vendor, you watch every day, a rather better dressed person will come along and have a chat and then get a little of his produce or a few free cigarettes or maybe a few paisa or rupees and put it in his pocket and then move down the street. Then if you watch that individual every month they will go to the local police station, and they'll go in and then they'll hand over an envelope to the local policeman. And then every month you watch that local policeman. He will go to his police chief. He will hand over an envelope to his superintendent. And then every month that superintendent will go off to the central state capital of Uttar Pradesh, and he will go to the local minister and he'll hand over an envelope. And then every year that chief minister will go to Delhi and he will hand over a suitcase. That's how it works. So you basically buy its protection, its mafia protection, and you buy, and the whole system is maintained through pay. So the taxation system doesn't work. And you have this corruption system.